In this Last Epoch guide, I'm going to show you my Shatter Strike build that's based around speed to clear monoliths as fast as possible at this level. Now, I did release a video before this. Basically, I was much earlier level, but too many people were complaining about the build for some reason, not enough damage, etc. Well, the thing is, what people don't understand is when you are doing a build, it's based around the gear that you have at the time and the level. So the thing with Spellblade, I think maybe they haven't run Spellblade before. When you're first running Spellblade in the earlier levels, it's very important to have some like defenses, right? Like ward and mana and stuff like that. I don't focus on damage in the early stages of my Spellblade. I just focus on speed. And it really is dependent on the gear that you pick up as you are actually playing the game. So let's get into it and I'll explain to you how to get some of the gear and stuff. And, I don't really care about damage until late game, but I'll show you how to get some damage. Right, look at this. 11,000, we can just double it by going like that. 20,000. And within a few more hours, I'm probably going to have this at 200,000. I can get damage, not a problem, but that's not what this build is about. So first of all, you're going to be running Flame Ward. This is for defenses. You're going to be running Shatter Strike. This is your main attack. Now, Frostclaw, you don't really need to have. This is more late game. You're not going to be running this at the early levels. You're probably not going to be running anything in this spot for the early levels, but late game, you can do this from like 50. And then we're going to use Enchant Weapon as well for more damage, and then Mana Strike for mana. First, let's get into the gear so I can explain to you what the gear is. First of all, we have a headpiece, and I am stacking Dex. Now, if you go down here and you do Alt, you can see that Dexterity scales your melee damage and your melee cold damage. And then Dex also gives you dodge rating, which I like. I like to have as much dodge as I can, especially on this build. You've got to remember you're up close. You're going to be getting hit all the time, especially with like elementals and stuff like that. And mana, physical resistance, and increased armor and increased health. I don't really need increased health, but we use it anyway. Now, physical resistance is also your bleed. So any bleed that applies to you is physical damage. So physical resistance is for that. Sorry, I just realized I had the wrong amulet on. So for the amulet, we have 38% increased cold damage. We have ward and dodge rating, which is most important on this one. I don't care about how healing effectiveness right now. Now, this is where people were a little bit like on my last video talking about this. So this is the weapon that I'm running. I run two, obviously. The Humming Bee. Now, this only drops in low-level areas, so you want to farm this at the start of the game. Or if you want to get this another way, you can go to the Forge, and you can put in a normal rare sword, and then you can use your rune that turns it into a unique if you want. You can Google how to do that. So what this does, and the reason why I have this, is it gives us increased melee attack speed. It gives us increased movement speed, which is what I want for this build because that's what I've based this build on. It gives us ward on melee hit, which is very important, especially at the early levels of this build, which people don't seem to understand. I don't care about damage in the early levels. And then this gives us more ward when we get haste. And then elemental attacks deal 1% increased damage per 200 ward, which is not a very big buff at the early stages. On here, I just have Dex, Intelligence, ward per second, and increased dodge rating. And then this weapon is increased cold damage, increased melee speed, as you can see, melee speed again. And then we have Apply Frivolity, I think it's called, which is a good one. It means enemies can't damage you as much. And then the health on melee hits, not that. Don't really need that because the ward doesn't go down on this build. Now, if you look at this, boom, our damage has increased by significantly. But this is the thing. Not everybody's going to have this weapon right now. Not everybody's going to have access to a better weapon than this right now. So it all depends on the weapon that you have. Although this does much more damage, I like to run this at this point of time. So that's what I run. I could run this if I want, but I like to run this because I get more movement speed with this one. The next item is we get attunement, freeze rate multiplier, which is important because you do more damage to frozen enemies, dodge rating, which is important, and then some elemental resistance. If you didn't know, attunement gives you more mana, so you do want to have a little bit of that. This bout is just average mana regeneration, increased cold damage, increased dodge rating. This I just picked up, so I did have a different ring, but this gives us increased elemental damage, cold resistance, stun avoidance. Once again, this is going to determine on what you roll. And then I have increased health and mana. 26% of mana spent gained as ward. This is really good because our mana goes down extremely fast. This here is another good set piece for the speed build. This gives you increased health. Evade is replaced with Terrify, which basically you put Terrify on the enemy and you give, and they take 10% more damage from you. And you have Swiftness, which gives you, once again, a movement speed. Remember, this is not about damage. This is about movement and getting through monoliths quickly and slashing and dashing, just getting in and out. It does take a tiny bit longer to kill enemies, but it's very marginal. 8% increased cast speed doesn't matter. And then we don't get slowed. Okay, that's big. We don't get slowed by anything. These here, they give us movement speed, and then movement speed again, because that's what it's rolled. We get freeze rate multiplier. And then for every dex we have, dexterity, we get plus cold damage to our attacks. Now, the only downside is we get minus physical and cold resistance per dexterity, but it doesn't matter right now because our dexterity is not entirely high. It's only 25. It's not that high. And then we have this relic, just increased critical strike chance. Not that important right now because I'm not trying to build a critical strike build right now. And then mana regen and health. So you could find something better than this for sure. Now we'll come back to the idols. Let's just go to the passives real quick. I'm not going to go over everything, but you can just have a look. So we have some health and mana. We have some damage, 2 points into intelligence here. And then I have 5 points into speed again. This here we have points into just straight up damage. I have points into ward and intelligence. I have points into melee cold and then freeze multiplier. This here is a defensive shielding. This is where when you do Shatter Strike, you do Frost Claw as well. And I'll show you how that helps us in a second. This here increased melee speed attack. This here lets us have 2 weapons. This here gives us health and mana. This here gives us dexterity and melee damage, or you could put your dex into this one, your points into this dex to get more critical chance, but I'm not doing that right now. I'm not doing a critical build right now. We have 2 points into this for extra damage, 8 points into this for intelligence and ward. Okay, so that's what I've done here. And here I have 6 points into this because I want mana and some extra ward. Remember, guys, this build sucks at low levels. It's not very good. So you need to have ward and mana, or you're going to die a lot. We have mana and some mana regen. The reason we have mana is so we don't run out of mana quickly and die. It's crazy how people focus just on damage. It's mind blowing to me, especially at the early stages of the build. Now I'm going to start getting into damage because now I have some damage weapons. But I wanted to do this guide first before I actually started doing that. Now let's get into the skills. Shatter Strike. This is what I have. I have 2 points into this, which is just more damage. 1 point into this, which is just more damage in area. 5 points into this for attack speed plus 75%. And then I have no points into that one. I have 5 points into this for cold penetration. And then I have 1 point into this. Take that point out. That doesn't need to be there because I'm not doing a critical right now. I'm going to take that off. And then we have 1 point into this, just because that's a little bit more damage, but takes away some speed. I'll probably take a point out of here and put it into that. And then here we have mana efficiency and ward again. On this, we just want to focus on building attack speed. A little bit of damage here because we needed that. Mana strike, mana gain. And then this here as well, we get some more mana gain off critical strikes. This is just to build mana and some defenses. We get a little bit of ward. We get more mana here when we hit an enemy. And then this one here converts lightning to cold just because it's a cold build. This here is defenses as well. So we have ward, we have shield, we have some elemental resistance kind of thing here. And then we have, it costs less to do it, less mana. And this one here, we have less mana as well. And that's really that. Very straightforward. It's just defensive stuff. That's the point of that. This one here, you want to go down this track first, and you want to put some points into this, some points into this, and then point into this so it automatically activates it. And then I have a point into this. You can really do whatever you want here, right? Like, I just like to do melee attack speed and defensive stuff. And here we have you have increased chance to chill enemies. I just had to put 2 points into that. I don't really want that, but I did that so I can get more cold damage. Okay, because that's important for this build. Next, Frostclaw. This is a little bit more to this one. So remember, this activates automatically. You don't need to do anything with this. First of all, you want to put the mana cost as low as possible. So put 3 into this, and you also get some mana back. That's important, or you're just going to rip through your mana. No point in running this build. Frostclaw hits have a chance to slow. You need to put points into this to get to here. You have increased cast speed. You want to have that one on. And then down here, we have when you hit an enemy, you have a chance to retaliate with frost. When you're hit by an enemy. So this is a good one as well. Although not necessary because you will eventually be killing enemies so quick they're not really going to be hitting you much. When you cast Frost Claw, you gain ward based on the freeze multiplier. So have this one on. Next, Frost Claw deals additional spell damage based on your added melee damage. This is just a straight damage thing. Frost Claw deals more damage, a multiple to the other modifiers, and its explosion deals damage to a larger area. And this is also increased if you have 1200 ward. I have some into that. Now this is where it gets good. Make sure you have this one on. Gain a stack of Frozen Sleeper every second up to a maximum. When you cast Frostclaw, it consumes all stacks to gain cold penetration per stack and release an ice spiral for each stack. Basically, what that means is when the stacks get released, you get 10% cold penetration per stack, so 60%, right? Cold penetration is when the enemy has cold resistance, you're penetrating that. So you're basically, that's just more damage to you because you're penetrating their cold resistance. So it's damage in a way. You're penetrating it. Okay. So that's what that is. Very straightforward. So we've gone over all of that. Now let's go over some of the idols that I have. I have armor idols. I have some physical resistance idols. I have cold penetration idols and elemental resistance. Now, elemental resistance only counts towards fire, lightning, cold. Everything else you have to do separately if you didn't know that, okay? I've got some neurotic resistance here. We've got increased critical strike chance. I don't really need that right now, but I just have it there anyway because a little bit of critical's not that bad. If you don't know, with this build, you can basically get 100% critical, and that's what I'm waiting for. And then we have armor and some elemental resistance. We have freeze rate, elemental resistance. We have 58% increased melee elemental damage. This is important. And I've rolled melee damage on it as well. We've got armor and mana, dodge rating, and we have, what have I got this one for? The melee damage. Okay, I don't really care about the chance to bleed, and then some dodge rating. And that's really it, guys. Just remember that Spellblade, you don't need to be stacking damage, especially at the start of your run. Now I'm going to be starting stacking damage at level 73. I don't care about stacking damage on this build in the early stages. All I care about is speed, 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 ward, and mana, and defensive. So I can just run through everything quick as possible. Right, guys? Give this build a go. If you have I don't know, addicted to damage, this build isn't for you. Go do a damage Spellblade build if you want. I'll see you guys in the next video.